It actually works or not is something that, well, I mean, you're all American, aren't you? You tell me. Whether it actually works or you live there, I'm merely spitballing. But my argument would be is that there is simply no incentive. If it's cheaper to just exterminate human beings before they're born, that's the option everyone's going to go for. And anything like, school start, sure starts, or food stamps, or whatever, that stuff will never improve because there's no incentive to improve it. Does that make any kind of sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the only thing I was going to add to what Kendon was, sorry, I keep saying Kenyon. I don't know why I'm saying that. Kendon was saying is that corporations have an even bigger incentive, which is not just the short-term cost, but the longer-term cost. We have data from a century of countries around the world that shows that where you legalize abortion, female participation in the workforce goes up exponentially, like by a large margin. I think it's something like it went up like 10 to 12 times in countries where they made abortion legal. So of course, corporations have a very vested long-term interest in providing abortions to females that they want to have in the workforce. That's all I was going to say.
Well, I was going to say, and if I can pick up on that, Rachel, one of the other, you often find that a lot of people who are pro-choice are also anti-capitalist, especially in the United States. They hate the corporatocracy, if that's even a word, that runs the United States of America, and obviously lobbies politicians all the time and things like that. By constantly treating this issue as an economic one, a socio-economic one, and ignoring any kind of spiritual or moral, whatever philosophical ramifications, you turn, as Rachel's alluded to, women as well as men, of course, into just cogs in the corporate machine. And the advantage of having a home life and having something is away from the markets, away from the workforce, away from the factory making widgets or whatever, is that it takes power away from them. I would argue. Again, if you want to tear that apart, you can do.
I don't know. I think that when you provide excellent, and I'm speaking from experience. I used to live in Germany for 5 years. The maternity leave is 2 years.
Is it too? Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh, they take care.
The Germans are doing it properly then. I'm genuinely impressed with that.
Yeah, and it encourages the women to not leave the workforce, but also allow to have a baby. They also Germany also provide them not a nanny, but somebody to come and help, like clean the diapers and Also, oh shoot, sorry about that, my freaking phone. To also clean the diapers and to also help around the house with the mother. So, you know, this is something that should be here. So my argument would be, why not have that here in America first, and then start going for the abortion?
Well, timing could well be an issue, I suppose, but you know, you could. Why not? But why not do both at the same time? I suppose you could argue. Why not get rid of abortion and improve your welfare service? But the trouble is, as well, I think because Roe versus Wade in your country was. I don't want to say sneakily done because it was done in public, but it was slipped in. Is that the phrase I want to use? I think this has been a hot button. Since 1973, Roe versus Wade was put into place, wasn't it? Since the 1970s, Roe versus Wade has been a hot button issue. It's not even about abortion at that point. It's the way it was done. It was the way it was punted upstairs to the Supreme Court. It was passed without grassroots support, really. No popular vote. No consideration of state legislature. It's anti-democratic. It was undemocratic, one could argue. It's anti-federal because yours is, of course, a federal system, as you know better than I do. And so I think Roe versus Wade has been there like a thorn in the side of constitutional conservative America since the 70s. And that's why they're desperate to get rid of it. Also, a lot of Republicans in your country believe rather than having a bloated, centralized state welfare system, they believe in local government, they believe in local charity, religious involvement, of course, religious charity. So yeah, they a lot of the people who oppose Roe versus Wade also oppose very welfare provisions that I would actually endorse.
We're going to agree on that one. Actually, I'm going to tell you, this is I see the conservatives over here. They're so hypocritical. They don't want to take care of these unplanned pregnancies. They lose their crap when it comes to welfare. And let's not talk about anchor babies. So they sit up here and they hate when women have a bunch of unplanned pregnancies. They always want to do this fatherless home situation. But yesterday they told me, don't you kill your baby. Don't you kill your baby because the Lord said so. I can't stand that. And I don't come from that position at all. I think like, hey, like I want abortion to be available so that we don't have to worry about a bunch of welfare. Okay, I'll be on that hill but you cannot sit up here and deny financial assistance from the government, which my side bitch about all the time, and then sit up here and encourage the very thing that's going to raise our taxes and cause us to pay the welfare that a lot of people on the right don't want to do. The conservatives don't want to do with.
Yeah, as I say, I'm not addicted to welfare in the sense that I don't particularly want everybody to be slaves to a welfare state. But I recognise I've had this conversation thanks to James and Stephen Ryan of the YouTube channel Cider and Port. I don't know if he's watching, but I've just promoted his YouTube channel for him. This is where the conversation starts. It's not where it ends. And I think the trouble is, particularly in the American conversation, it's you're either pro-life or pro-choice. And that's it, but there are ramifications for what I am proposing, and what Rachel is ultimately proposing is an increased number of babies in the civilization that we're discussing. So what are you going to do about it? It's no good. It's no good ensuring there has to be some kind of adjustment, maybe not a massive one, but there has to be some kind of adjustment. So what was I going to put? I had a point, it's gone. I'm going to leave that there, I think, because I'll stop rambling. I'll try and remember what I was coming up with. Does anybody else want to tear apart what I've said? Destiny's been very quiet for a while.
Stephen?
I don't think any of the conversation topics are relevant to anything. I think that the only thing that matters with abortion is determining when it's a life or not, and that past that point, every conversation topic is meaningless. Because any topic you talk about socioeconomic or any issues, we would never, ever, 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 ever accept killing a 1-year-old child. So if we think that like a fetus is a life, then I don't care like what any other arguments are. You just shouldn't have an abortion. So I usually don't engage with anything past that distinction of when is it worth protecting and when is it not, because I don't think it's relevant. So.
Well, the only thing I would say is that life does begin at conception. Even the medical forces would acknowledge this. I don't think consciousness is a particularly good barrier because, of course, there's some debate about whether consciousness even exists. Because the potential of consciousness, like waking up from deep sleep or a coma, exists for most babies. There's very few babies. Stillbirths and miscarriages are fortunately rare, and as someone who's dealt in my private life, I have female friends who have fallen pregnant, who have miscarried, and who have had stillbirths and all sorts of things. It's worth preserving because it's a living, it's an organism at that point. It's worth preserving. It's going to become a baby, it's going to become a human being, and I find that all lines that are drawn about whether it's a true human being or not are entirely arbitrary. It's entirely down to personal taste, and I don't think that any human agency, whether it's government or religious or social, should have the right to determine whether something should live or die or not based on a definition that someone's written down somewhere, which is obviously subject to revision. There we go.
Oh, okay, I disagree with every single statement you made. So when we say life begins at conception, sure, there is a life, some kind of life there, some kind of living thing, but we don't protect all living things. We're concerned with protecting human life, right? So when does that thing become something worth protecting is the question. When we talk, we don't even know if people are conscious. I don't know how to engage with that. I think I've demonstrated adequately that consciousness is something that all of us consider, and it is the thing that we consider for when people are dead or not. You can keep a body alive for a long time with a bunch of different fancy machines, but if they're never going to wake up, we don't waste the money to do that because there's no purpose in doing that. We don't say that things are worth preserving just because they're organisms. There's a million different types of organisms we wouldn't preserve. When you talk about the fact that it's going to become a baby or human being, it seems like you're acknowledging that there is a distinction between what it is and what it's going to become, and it is not the thing that it's going to become. That's why it's going to become that thing, and you do not have all of the inherent properties of the thing you're going to become when you haven't become it yet. Therefore, there is a distinction there. When we say that it's entirely arbitrary, sure, but that's not a way to get rid of any arguments, because obviously we need to decide at some point we're not going to kill 5-year-olds and say, well, it's all arbitrary. And personal taste also doesn't apply here because we're talking about social values for the entirety of society. We can't say it's in my personal taste to kill 5-year-olds. And to say that the government doesn't have the right to determine if something should live or die, that is probably one of the most important functions of the government, is to protect life. Governments will make rules on whether or not how we can kill each other or who's entitled to live or die based on certain things. You're not allowed to just dump your child in the street and watch them die, or you have some obligation to take care of children in your house. You can't just kill your grandma because she's really fucking annoying. So, yeah.
You give up the heck
with everything that Stephen just said, strangely enough, except for the fact that I would not say that consciousness is the thing that we would use.
What is your positive argument? What would you say then, I guess? What is, so you can give me a position.
So what I would say is it is a human life. That we know for sure.
Wait, but I'm asking, at what point do you endow it with moral consideration? When does that happen?
Immediately,
yes,
you would have to say conception, and my definition of that would be implantation, because you don't know if a fertilized egg is going to be, there's no
why would you say implantation and not conception?
Well, because up until it implants, it's not necessarily human life. You can't say that
so are you in favor of
cell division is happening or things like that?
I mean,
because you just won't know. Wait,
hold on. Let's say that we take an egg from a person and we start growing it in an incubator. Is this never going to become a human because it didn't implant in a uterus? Or?
Oh, well, that would be an exception then. So if we did do that, then yes, it would be a human life. Okay, then are you in favor of also Plan B, since that prevents implantation? I'm not really in favor of Plan B, but as a legal,
wait, you have to say why.
Right. I'm going to say why.
Yeah, okay,
I'm going to totally explain why. So there's a difference to me between the ethical argument and the legal argument.
Well, I'm only asking ethically. I don't care legally.
Ethically, I'm against it. Legally, I would probably permit it further.
Eject the legal shit. I super don't care because we're not having a legal argument right now. So how can you be against it if you think that implantation is the moment a life begins?
Because I'm against any measure that prevents human life. So if you don't know.
There we go.
Right? When you take Plan B, you don't know if that egg is fertilized or not. You don't know if.
We need to. You have to amend that statement, because I'm guessing you don't think that condoms are a form of abortion or something, right? Even though they prevent human life, right?
No, I think there's a difference between abortifacient types of birth control and non-abortifacient
Well, how is it an abortifacient if you don't think it's a human life until implantation begins?
Well,
if you prevent the implantation,
so
then
let
what's...
me clarify. It's
okay,
not
go
that
for it.
I don't think it's human life. I was mainly making a pragmatic, like, legal argument.
Wait, hold on. I'm not looking for pragmatic legal arguments. This is an ethical debate.
to
So
clarify
eject
for
all
you
the
for
legal
ethics,
arguments. Yeah.
Yes, I think that any attempt to prevent implantation would also be an attempt to prevent human life from continuing its natural.
Sure, but so if
process.
we're saying that preventing implantation is in and of itself immoral, then implantation can't be the point at which you say it's endowed with some moral consideration. It must be the moment before, then it must be conception, then not implantation. Implantation
Well-
is just another step on the journey to becoming a fully fledged human being.
Yeah, this is kind of
Yeah,
this
that's
is
consistent. Yeah.
right. This is the conundrum of what to do, is because people want to have sex ever since women's liberation.
Well, hold on,
everybody just
don't
wants to
care.
have sex.
That's not relevant to the
So-
conversation. A lot of people also want
Right.
to kill their fucking kids. I have an 11-year-old. I'll be honest about that, but that doesn't make it a moral right, or doesn't mean we can do that.
Say
not do-
that.
Okay?
That's horrible.
Okay, you've had a 2-year-old kid, all right? Okay, but that so
Live,
somebody,
and I love them, and
so-
I don't want to kill them.
somebody that wants to do something doesn't. We're focused on the ethics.
Right,
so,
right.
So I'm going to delete. We're not talking implantation then. We're
Right,
talking conception, the
purely
moment of
ethically.
conception. Yeah.
Purely ethically, and this is the stance of my church, is that no, you don't try to prevent humans from being born for any reason.
Sure, so-
out of personal convenience or
Sure.
anything
So
like
we're going to say the moment of conception then is going to be the moment that we endow it with
So as a
all of
powerhouse
the
boxer,
moral
you just take him to the
consideration that we
ground
would for
right away?
any normal human being, right? At the moment of
Yeah,
conception.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay. If we have that figured out, why?
Why? Because, as you said yourself, it's a human life. I don't base it off of conscious experience, because I think that that's, you get into some really subjective territory.
Okay, do
there,
you think
so-
that like a corpse should have the same protections as a fetus?
Do you think a corpse is alive?
I don't, but your definition is that it's a human life. I don't
Yes.
know, what is a human life to you? What does that mean?
Well, okay, a human life would be if you can see cellular activity, and so bacteria is alive, right? I'm not trying to equate human life to bacteria, but I'm saying we know that an embryo at any stage is human life. It's alive. If it wasn't alive, you wouldn't have to kill it, which is that's my whole problem with abortion. People want to
Shit.
say like, oh, well, you're not technically killing it because blah, 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 blah. But you wouldn't have to kill it.
Okay, hold
if
on.
it
So
wasn't
that
alive.
argument is total nonsense. No one is saying that you're not killing anything. What's being said is you're not killing like a human life that has moral consideration. Obviously,
You're
there's
not
something to
saying
be
that, but a lot of people will say
There's not a
it's
lot of people
killing
in the
it,
call right now.
doesn't
It's just me, though. Okay.
Right, okay.
So saying that like,
So
well,
no,
if
we
it's
don't
alive, you
kill-
wouldn't have to kill
We
it.
don't kill human life. No.
Sure, obviously, by definition, we don't kill human life, or most
Right.
sane people should say that, right? So,
Yes.
okay, so then backing up, there's a lot that, there's so many different, it's just, okay, well, you say that it's a human life because you can see cellular activity. So I'll skip ahead to all the boring stuff and we'll qualify this more because I'm assuming you can see decomposition in dead bodies. That's technically cellular activity, but we'll clarify
There
that
we
you
go.
probably don't mean
Right,
that
but
type
not
of
a
cellular
actual
activity.
corpse.
We'll say maybe a nicer phrase might be some sort of like metabolic activity or some homeostasis activity where the
Right.
body is maintaining
cell
itself.
division, something like that.
Not necessarily something, but sure, we'll say something like that. Okay, even if that was the case though, okay,
the powerhouse
if I
do
could
it?
demonstrate to you, if I could
survive?
show you a body where I put a body on a table and I can hook it up to blood
scary.
bypass machines, dialysis machines, everything, I can
I might
leave
get
it
this one.
functioning and all that, but I scooped the brain out, and the person will never wake up again. Would you say that that is a human life?
No, because, well, here's the distinction. I think I can help you with this. We're talking about intervention, right? We're talking about human intervention.
Wait,
The
no.
reason-
That's, I'm trying to figure out what it is you're protecting. I don't know what that,
Life.
that's what,
Human-
no,
human
it's
life.
not life. It's not human
Yes.
life. It's something
Yes.
more than that because a decomposing body is human life. I'm trying to figure out,
It's not, though. How is a decomposing body human life? That's bacteria living off the dead tissue. but
the
body
dead
is
tissue
no
is
longer
literally
alive.
not, it doesn't all die instantly. It's literally part of the development is you, from the moment of conception to the absolute decomposition of every last cell in your body is all part of your biological journey from start to finish. So there's
No. I don't think that that's so. Number one, you're relying on like some sort of scientific definition, right?
No, well,
So-
I'm trying to figure out what your definition. I'm not trying to rely on anything. I'm trying to.
Yeah, there
there's
we
some bounded area in here.
Surely,
Yeah.
but surely, if a human being is dead, if the bacteria are feeding off the dead tissue, the tissue is breaking down.
This is one.
That's
I
happening
hate
in your
this.
living body
Follow
right
one.
now. Bacteria
Stephen,
feeds
the
off of
difference
tissue.
is,
That's true.
you're saying if we could take all kinds of crazy measures to animate some kind of dead
Okay,
corpse
hold on, wait. I have to.
versus-
Wait. I can't let you poison the argument with words like that. Crazy arguments. There are bodies that can be kept alive almost indefinitely that are in like long-term comas in hospitals. That's not crazy. That's not far out.
No.
Not only is it not crazy or far out, there have been very real medical debates about this in the United
Yes.
States. I'm sure you remember Terry Schiavo, right? Yeah, these are huge issues that people talk about. So these are not crazy things. These are
that
very real, very grounded,
Yes.
very
Oh,
pragmatic
yes.
issues we deal with. Okay.
Granted,
I imagine that technically, if someone were brain dead, but you could hook their bodies up to various machines to keep their organ systems running, that you would qualify as human life. However, if the patient, let's use that word, if the patient were brain dead without the possibility of recovery, and therefore without the of consciousness and all the rest of it, of going into the world and impacting human society in hopefully positive ways, you could argue that switching off the machine and then harvesting the organs for donation wouldn't make much of a difference. But at that point, because it's on the downward trajectory at that point, if the person has reached physical maturity, they've suffered a head injury, they're not going to experience consciousness again,
Ooh, let's go.
etc., etc.
but-
They're on the downward slope.
We don't no. I think that whether or not something is alive, we view fairly binarily in a binary manner. We don't say that since you're on the downward slope, now we're going to kill you. Like grandma's on the downward slope, we're not killing her, right? So I'm trying to
Grandma's going out,
find where the
boys.
bounds are for what you consider to be a life worth protecting, because that's where I'm going to find where your definitions are. Because everything that's said so
got
far has been hazy.
I understand
Yeah,
what you're
that's
saying.
all I'm
and
looking for, yeah.
But I think that there's a distinction between intervening to prevent a life from progressing as it normally would, and intervening to end a life faster than it might normally end. I think there's a difference there. I don't think you can say that they're exactly the same.
Sure, those are
It's the
different
difference
things,
between
but it's not
bullshit.
relevant to what like intervening to prevent what or
why
ending
do we
what.
keep talking about corpses and how long we're going to preserve life versus
Uh-oh, it's getting
the
dangerous.
conversation about abortion is about people stop. The whole reason you have an abortion is to prevent
Getting
that
dangerous.
human
Oh,
being
no.
from
Oh,
further
no.
developing into.
Yeah, but it's the
into
same
life,
reason why you would
right?
wear a condom or
Got
practice abstinence, is to prevent the formation of a human being. But
Yes,
again,
but once it's already formed,
He goes down on the ground one more time. that's it.
Abortion isn't contraception,
Right.
because contraception takes place before conception.
that's great. And a
Abortion takes
fetus,
place
the
after
potential to
fetus is
become
developed.
conscious is not a conscious being either, right? I agree
Also,
with
a
you.
cluster of cells are not human beings, actually.
Sure,
You
well,
know, they
we're-
have
you're a
that's-
cluster of
characteristics.
cells.
but
You're a
we're all
cluster of cells.
cluster
I'm a
cells.
cluster
Sure.
of
We're all
cells.
clusters of
Sure,
Right,
but
but
I'm
what
saying
you-
that there needs to be something a little bit more, it seems, because when I'm pushing you on the like, what is a dead person, or when are they dead, or if I scoop a person's brain out, even if I can show you all of the other organ systems are functioning fine, it seems like that brain doing something is pretty important for us to determine whether or not that thing is still alive.
See, I don't think that it's in the
But then-
brain, and
but-
I think you're making like kind of an
I was on a KO.
unequivalent
He was
analogy
lucky.
by trying to say.
Sure. When you
well,
say
this
it's not in the
corpse has
brain,
some-
when you say it's not in the brain, could you give me an example of a thing without
Well,
a brain that,
well,
like, this is the
but
life
this
that I have
is
to
a-
protect, right?
Alright,
Like,
need to take a break.
Destiny, if I may interject, sorry, this is one of the dangers with the consciousness argument, or the quality of mental life.
to be
like,
clear, I don't think
is
I've
that-
had any dangerous parts of my argument. I feel pretty consistent with mine. I'm still pushing. I'm not even at mine. I'm trying to get one from you guys, but go ahead.
Well, no. The problem is that what do you mean by consciousness as well? Is the other problem?
Sure, when I say
is-
consciousness, hold on, you don't have to ask and pretend I don't have an answer. I can answer every question you have for me. So when I say consciousness, it seems like we have an awareness, and that awareness is an emergent property
that's
from the
done.
communication of
That's
several
done.
underlying structures in the brain. And
Said
those
it one more
structures that
time,
are
it goes down,
necessary
that's
to
a wrap.
communicate with each other,
So
with the
6
emergent
seconds,
property
go,
of consciousness
go,
up here, seem to be in place and communicating with each other at around 20 to
6
24 weeks
seconds,
of
let's go.
gestation.
Okay, so what if someone is experiences a traumatic head injury, and their consciousness is impaired? Would that make them a lesser life?
No, I don't think so. Having an impaired consciousness or a higher consciousness doesn't make you lesser. But you're still having a conscious experience worth protecting, even if it might be somewhat impaired.
Right, but do you not think that if a baby is going to develop a consciousness, and you know that that's coming, that the potential of consciousness is just as valuable as consciousness itself?
No, there's no other ontological category you can give me where the potential of a thing is the same thing as the thing. That just never ever exists. I'm curious, or can you give me an example of like, if I put together like a thing here and a thing here, and then somebody comes by and they destroy it, would you ever say, I had the parts to build the building, you destroyed my building? Or would you say, no, you destroyed the parts of the building? The potential of a thing to become a thing is its own thing. It's not the same thing as the thing it's going to become. That's not true.
Well, no, but there are two problems. The gestation of a human being is a unique scenario anyway, but also
That's
if
not
you're
unique.
talking about,
But go ahead.
but no, but if you're talking about like that, you've got the bits of the building and you haven't built it yet, then you're talking about tissue, if you like. Whereas if you're assembling the building and you've put the foundations in and you've got the the major structures in, for example, and then I come and knock it over with a wrecking ball, you could argue that I've destroyed your building, but the building was being assembled.
No, you would say you've destroyed the foundations of a building. You wouldn't say you've destroyed an entire building, right? If 9/11 happened with a foundation dug out and there were, no towers there, people wouldn't say, oh my God, they blew up 2 buildings. They'd say like they crashed into the foundation of a newly constructed building, right? That was in the process of being built. The thing that you're going to become is not the thing itself. These are 2 separate things. I think so. Backing up again, I'm just trying to figure out. It seems to me, I'm curious if either of you answer this. If I can take out. Okay, so here's a thought challenge that I would give to both of you. I would argue that I can remove every single organ, at least one organ, from any body, from any person. I can take any organ out and replace it with some kind of machine. I can give you a fake heart. I can do dialysis for your kidneys. I can process things for your liver. I can do all these things. But if I remove the brain, something has fundamentally changed with that person. If I take out the brain and I keep everything else working, it seems like something has changed there. Do you agree or disagree with that? Or do you think you can remove brains from people and still have like a functioning, like working human? You can just substitute that out with some other thing.
Well, no. I mean, it's you can't communicate with the body once the brain has been removed. That's certainly true.
Well, so then let's say theoretically, if you believe that to be the case. Now, I'm not going to say this is happening, but let's say theoretically that a fetus had no brain until 6 months. Would you then agree that the fetus with no brain until 6 months doesn't even have a thing worth protecting yet, or?
No, but what it has is that it's going to, because you know that a brain is coming, and you know that if you intervene, that human life will be sabotaged before it's truly developed. It's not the same thing as removing a brain from it's a different scenario, isn't it?
Okay, so if I push you on this category, so when you say you know something is coming, okay, so now you're not protecting a particular thing. It seems like you're making the concession that the thing in and of itself is not really worth protecting, but it's going to become something that will be worth protecting.
I would say no.
Too early.
You think no
Here's the
what?
reason that we're not talking about something composed of parts that's going to become a thing. It's human life, and we do have a scientific definition for that. When you have human life, you have things like cell metabolism, you have reproduction of cells. That's not something you have in dead bodies.
It's just not true, okay? Your hair and your nails will grow for, I think, maybe weeks. At the very least, it's days after death.
Actually, I think I'll just
that's a myth. That's a myth.
Yeah, that's a myth.
The tissue shrinks. It's the illusion.
It's not that the tissue is growing. You don't have cellular reproduction and division going after the body's dead.
Okay,
That's not
sure. Maybe you don't. Even if that was the case, if I can give you a healthy body without a brain, where the cells are still metabolizing and everything, it sounds like you guys earlier said that you wouldn't agree that that's like a living body worth protecting.
Well, again, you're talking about there's a big.
all these misses.
This is not analogous, right? To say, okay, there's a human life. It is taking its natural process. It is already a human life. And now we're going to talk about there's a body, and we're going to do all kinds of scientific Frankenstein stuff to to keep it alive without brains or alive without organs. These are not analogous.
Okay, hold on.
We're talking about intervention.
Nothing here is analogous. We're not talking about intervention. We can't even have that conversation yet, because I still don't know what you value in a human life. The reason why I'm asking these hypotheticals is I'm trying to figure out, because however eager you are to attack my definition of conscious, you've given me nothing yet. Your position.
I can give you something right now.
Okay, but just be careful, because you keep saying things like human life, cell division, blah, blah, but anytime I've tested any of the examples you've given with a hypothetical,
you're
saying
asking scientific questions with your hypothetical.
No, wait, I'm not. None of these questions are science.
Human life is intrinsically valuable in and of itself. It doesn't have to already meet certain criteria that you're arbitrarily putting in there. It is human life, and the purpose of abortion is to come in and prevent human life. It's to come in and kill the
Okay,
human
but
life.
preventing human life isn't all wrong. This is what I'm trying to get a simple, narrow definition. Because you would say condoms aren't condoms aren't wrong, and that's okay.
Steven, it's something that's
sperm are already
alive,
sperm are
and
but
it's coming into
sperm
life.
are already alive. So there's
Well,
something
there you go.
else that's
That one.
happening here.
Tissue.
No,
Sperm
that's
is
not-
tissue.
Yeah.
The ovaries.
Tissue is alive. Your body, the tissue in your body is alive. What do you mean?
It's not a human being. You have to have both.
Yeah, but
sets of
neither is a
DNA from
fetus.
the
A
egg.
fetus is not a human being. That's
It is a human being.
Well, then what is
Define
it?
human
Yes.
being. Now that was what Steven beat me to it. Define human being.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out what is like
Define
that when we
human
say
being,
human being. Like,
Rachel
when does the
Atkinson.
life become that thing, that human being that's worth
At
protecting?
conception. At conception.
Okay, and then
Because it now has both sets of DNA from the sperm and the egg, and it is in the process of growing. It's already a human, it's already established, and if you didn't intercede to kill it, it would continue to develop, and it's already human.
Sure.
It's just going
I
through.
under- okay.
So
We-
you
hold
kill
on, wait,
a
okay.
tadpole,
We-
you're
wait,
still
no, no,
killing
no.
it.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
But would you say when you kill a tadpole, you kill a frog?
Yes.
Is
I'm
it
saying
wait.
you're killing a life. I'm
No,
saying
we're
you
not
kill a
talking.
life.
Wait, no one here is arguing whether you're killing a life or
It's
living
a human,
thing.
whether it's in
No,
an
we're not-
embryonic stage, a fetal stage, or a
Okay,
fully developed stage.
so
It's
in my
all
hold on,
different
wait, and then
definition
Tree,
of
you can go.
human
So in my opinion, when arguments come to the point where you circle the drain this hard, and then there's like a hard pivot on every single question,
circle.
I think that
Every time.
I think that the conversation has run its course. So I'm good on where I'm at for establishing my points. I think I set up consciousness as a pretty valid thing. I think I argue that convincingly this is why you're dead at the end of your life. It's when your conscious ceases to exist. I've tried for like 30 minutes to figure out like what is your thing for life that you would protect, and
And
I've
you
gotten
just
like
don't like
50
it.
to,
You
it's
just-
not that
you
I don't
just
like
don't
it, it's that
like it.
every time I try to push on, well, what about this or what about that, I get these answers like, well, that's a wild hypothetical.
Because they're
and
not
that's,
analogous.
So no,
Because
I
you're
know they're not
putting all the
analogous.
things that are- Right,
It
so
doesn't
then
have to be
can
one.
Be dismissed. It can be dismissed without logical penalty. Human life is human life, regardless of the stage
Right.
of development.
I
Is
gotta
that clear
run
enough?
downstairs real quick. No, nothing was clear in your definition. It was nothing
Human
was.
life is human
right back.
life, regardless of the stage of development that it's in. It doesn't matter if
You're
you're an
getting nervous.
embryo or if you're 90 years old, you are a human life, and that is worth protecting. I think that's super clear.
Define human body.
Well, this is the problem for me, because what I think the frustration is that
Q&A
because
soon.
different. Say again.
Q&A coming in soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Let
The
them answer
trouble
my
is that
question, then
because-
I'll drop everything too. I
Yeah,
just wanna
yeah.
ask that
See,
question.
the problem is, Tree, is that because one of the reasons I love coming onto debates like this, and James has invited me
Yes,
a few
sir.
times, is because I always approach these debates assuming that I'm wrong, because there must be, if I was right, everyone would agree with me. So I want to hear from different points of view. The trouble is that I think, particularly with abortion, it's one where everyone thinks that they're right, and I think I'm kind of like that way too. The problem is that you're asking, how do you define human life? That has troubled
human body.
philosophers from
I've got a
well, human
definition right
body.
here for human body.
Okay,
The
go ahead.
human body is the physical substance of the human organism, composed of living cells and extracellular materials organized into tissues, organs, and systems, which is exactly what I just said it was.
You know, I gotta fact check you because you're known to lie. You said that's the definition of a human body.
Yeah,
so
go ahead and Google it.
define human
I don't lie. It's just that
body.
you don't understand logic. It's
Okay.
not.
The thing is that these
Yeah,
definitions
see, I
have
knew you
troubled
lied.
people
You
for
lied
millennia.
by omission. Okay, the human body, the physical substance of a human organism composed of living cells and extracellular
That's what I
materials
just
and
said.
let me finish. Shut up. And organized
I'm
into
angry.
tissues,
Very angry.
organs, and systems in the human body. So you left out the organs.
I
And
didn't.
so
I
that's-
said
you,
all
no,
of
you
that.
know you're the humble
Back it up.
Tree,
Back it up and watch it again. I
Tree,
said
she
that.
did it. She
Here's-
did.
I did.
Tree,
Did they
she
say
did actually.
organs?
She did
Okay.
actually.
So
yeah,
here's the deal. Here's the deal. What organs does a fertilized cell have?
Well, it says composed of living cells and extracellular materials and organized into those things. So,
And
Ooh.
Just
organized
because it-
tissues, and it says comma, organs,
and
comma,
systems.
and systems.
Yeah, but this
Yes,
but
even
this is
embryos
the-
have systems. That's how
Do
they
I
sustain
just
their
asked a
life.
question.
Is it alive or is it not?
No. I just asked a question. Does a fertilized egg, based upon this definition, have an organ?
It has systems, tissues, and cellular materials.
Yeah,
Does-
it definitely has tissues, but it doesn't have
Hold on.
organs. But here's the
Oh
other.
my God,
Here's the
thank
other.
you, Kendra. Notice how you answer the question and she just skates by it. She does that every time. I ask, does this fertilized egg have an organ? She got,
tiny
it
thing,
had
little size
tissue
there.
and system. And then you just asked the question, yes, it has organized tissues, but it doesn't have an organ. That's all I wanted to know. And thank you for answering my question.
Well, but here's the question that I would put to anybody who's prepared to answer it.
There we go.
If a fetus
There
or an
we go.
embryo is not a human being, what is it?
It's a human fetus.
I mean, well, okay, but it's still human. Yes. It's still
I mean, a
alive.
tadpole is not a
It's different
frog,
stages
right? A
of
sperm, like it's like one stage. Like a corpse is a human corpse. A body could be a human body. A fetus can be a human fetus. Like we can talk about like the biological body that exists, but it seems like the thing that we value, that we treasure, that we're trying to protect is the conscious experience. It seems to be the thing that we're aimed at.
I don't agree.
Okay, that's fine that you don't agree. I know you don't agree, but you guys never gave me a good
But you haven't given a good reason why that needs to be the thing. What if I believe that all human life is valuable, that there's a soul in the body at conception, in the embryo at conception, there is
Take a moment to
soul,
breathe.
and that you don't have any better.
Then I would
pushback
ask you.
against that
I would
idea
ask
than
you.
I do
I
against
absolutely would.
consciousness.
I would ask you, where is the soul?
It's not something you can it's not something you can physically locate.
Then
right?
if it's not
more of
something
a
that I can
concept.
measure, I
But
have no. There's no way.
consciousness
I
can't
can't.
be measured either.
It absolutely can
Nope.
be in some
It
ways.
can't be.
Yes.
In some ways, see, you had to qualify that because we don't. This is something that's hotly debated.
It's
in
no. Hold on.
philosophy of
You-
science.
This is
Yes,
you.
it
This
is.
is your whole argument is Loki's wager. That if I can't pinpoint 100% exactly
Right.
what consciousness is,
Yes.
you're telling me that it is the same validity as your concept of a soul, which has no physical manifestation whatsoever.
Right, I'm saying if you're
hold on.
going to
I'm
choose
telling you that if
consciousness,
you're
you
going
have
to,
no
if
way
you,
to be back
if you are
against
going
my
to
concept of a
employ,
noose or a
if
soul.
you are going to employ debate terms and rational and logic and all that during this conversation, you have to understand the absurdity of saying that since I cannot give you a concrete 100% like analysis of where this particular thing is, that that very concept becomes equal to every other absurd thing that I can possibly think of. That is ridiculous.
I understand that you don't like it, but what
No,
I'm saying
hold
is that
on.
we're on equal
I'm not
ground.
saying that I
I'm
don't
saying we're
like
on
it. I'm
equal
telling
ground.
you that we're
I'm
not on-
saying that consciousness versus the soul, we
Okay.
are on equal ground. You can't unequivocally prove in some sort of. You like to.
Okay,
wanna
if
prove
I
in
make a
material sense,
statement,
right?
if I
But
make
you
a statement,
can't,
if I
and
make a
neither can I.
statement that there is a pink demon floating behind you that spins around every time you turn around to look at it, and then you
Right.
tell me I think that there is like oxygen floating behind you. Neither of us can prove that. Are we on
Right.
equal ground when we make those statements?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
By
I rest my
definition,
case. That's it.
we're on
Okay, I
equal
rest my
ground.
case. We're absolutely not. But if you think we are, then I understand more of your argument.
This
Okay.
may be a time for Q&A. If you happen to have questions, folks, we have got to move fast because we have a huge list already. We're going to move fast. In the meantime, I want to remind you our guests are linked in the description such that if you want to learn more about their views, you certainly can by clicking on their links below. Al Dan, thanks very much, says murder is a legal term. Laws reflect interests of the state. How does abortion hurt the state? It's murder only if those who live fear for their life.
Well, murder just means unlawful killing. So technically, if anything is permitted by the law, it's no longer murder. Abortion doesn't threaten the state, and I don't think any one of us made that argument. What I think it does is it threatens. There's a kind of cultural. What's the word I'm looking for? Kind of the social value that we place on other human beings. That would be the only argument. But abortion doesn't threaten the state at all. In fact, the state would like pregnant certain women, particularly if they're poor, to kill their unborn sponges to reduce the burden on the welfare state. So you could argue that abortion is something that the government would be rooting for. I just don't think that it should.
You got it. This one coming in from Didymus says, owing a baby resources is not the same as owning it your literal body. By Rachel's logic, stealing is the same as rape.
What?
What? Stealing? Okay.
What? I'm not. I'm trying to wrap my head around that one. I'm not sure.
This is
I'm not sure I get
again
that.
people not understanding that if you're going to make the argument that, hey, this thing depends on me for survival, therefore I have the right to kill it, that you can logically extrapolate that to say that children who are 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 6-month-old depend on me for survival, how dare they? They have no right, therefore I can kill it. And there are people who do make this argument.
I think the problem is that there's a fundamental difference between saying somebody that's wired to and growing inside of your body is going to be fundamentally different than an external being that exists, whose responsibility for life can be shared upon a bunch of people that are volunteering or being paid to do the work. Wait. When you say that might be, what I'm saying is I am totally breaking the analogy. For you to say that everything I was saying earlier was disanalogous, your comparison is disanalogous. To say, hey, would you want to take care of my 3-year-old son? And you're like, oh yeah, sure. And then they knock you out and you wake up and all of a sudden you're hooked up to a dialysis machine where your kidneys are, and they're like, oh, well, you said you'd take care of it. It's the same thing. No,
so
it is totally not the same thing.
It's a responsibility argument.
No, it's not a responsibility argument. There is fundamentally a difference between somebody being hooked into and relying on your body versus somebody that can be taken care of by multiple parties that are being compensated for doing something.
Everybody here understands that it's super, super easy. It's not like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This isn't Alien where a baby just jumps in your body and takes it over and it's like some kind of parasite succubus, right? We all understand how babies are made. We all understand how to avoid that.
Sure. So now when you say that, what you've basically admitted is you've conceded every part of your earlier argument. You said, okay, it is fundamentally different,
no,
but don't you in some ways consent? Don't you consent to that baby kind of taking over your body for all? Which, by the way, that's not a bad argument, right? There are arguments to be made, but by making that argument, you've conceded there is a difference between something growing inside of you versus a bunch of people being able to share the responsibility of taking care of an external created being. Those are fundamentally different things.
But you also can't say that there is no analogy, that it's not a logical extension. I'm not saying the two things are completely analogous.
It is a logical
it's a logical extension to say that if this life depends on me for survival, I have the right to kill it, that, well, then people will and do make the argument that, okay, what about a 2-week-old baby?
So the problem is you've created a slippery slope, to use the term. You've created a slippery slope.
Might be, but it's still valid.
No. You've
You
created.
don't like it, but it's so valid.
I can explain why it's not valid. So you've engaged in a slippery slope fallacy because you're saying that you've created one circumstance and you're saying that it will lead to the second. The first being.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Hold on. I didn't even say what you're saying yet.
She's so rude. Just interrupting.
No. Stop. You're saying that if you say something that depends on me for survival can be killed, then a 1 or 2 or 3-year-old child can be killed because they depend on people for survival. The only reason why this slippery slope works for you, though, is because you are uncharitably interpreting the first statement as depends on me for survival. But that's not really what a fetus does. The fetus grows inside of you while plugged into your body, depending on you for survival. It's not something that requires you to just feed it, to give it food, or to change its diaper. It's something that is hooked up to your body, fundamentally altering your entire existence and growing inside of you. Now, wait, real quick. I just want to finish real quick. Once you've amended the prior statement to say that I don't think you should be compelled to grow something that's relying on your body, you can't jump from there to say, oh, well, then wouldn't you just say you kill all children? Well, no, of course not. Children aren't hooked into your body relying on it for growth. There are external parties that can be involved taking care of that child. That's why your argument is disanalogous and why it's a slippery slope fallacy. Yes.
It might not be completely analogous, but what I'm saying is that you can't say, look, this thing is like a baby growing inside of you is not any different than, have you ever had, you've got an 11-year-old. I've got a bunch of kids. When that baby comes out, it still completely depends on you for survival, or it will die.
No, it doesn't.
So
Rachel,
yes,
how many times?
Unless you are. And that's a whole
it is a
thing.
fact of the matter that you are dead wrong. How many times in the 9-month period that you were pregnant with any child did your husband carry that baby for you?
You're assuming.
No, I need you to answer the question. I need you to answer the question because you're wrong. And then my next question. So you won't answer that. The answer I'll tell you guys in chat. I'm assuming that he never took the baby out of your tummy and carried it for you. Okay.
We're talking about the logical extension of the argument that she made.
The answer to number one. So real quick. The answer to number one is 0 times. Then if I were to ask you next, how many times did your husband feed your kid after it was born? The answer is probably more than 0. That's the difference, Rachel.
No. What I'm saying is that although these situations are not analogous, that does not mean that the extension of the logic of the argument is not valid. Those are separate things.
And then here and there you get people that
if you're going to say something depending on me, oh, well, because it's in my body, okay. Whether the location doesn't have anything to do with the fact that life depends on some outside thing to survive. You're assuming a third party or somebody else will come in. None of that matters. I'm saying it doesn't matter. I'm saying the extension of the logic of the argument is still valid.
You can repeat the same words all you want.
It's true.
But it's not. Because if I were to ask you how many times,
like it. Again, you just don't like
how
it.
many
You
times?
don't like things
How many
the same.
times
It's not
did your
true. You're
how many
lying.
times did your husband feed your 5-month-old fetus?
That is not the argument.
Never.
I'm making. I'm saying
Ever.
the logic of her argument is.
And I'm showing you why
something
your
depends
logic is
on me.
breaking down, because there's
It's
a
not
fundamental difference
breaking
between
down.
taking care of like an externally born child versus a thing growing in your body. There is no.
So do you
coming to
think
that
that you just
point.
feed it like every couple hours and it's fine? No, it requires 24/7 around the clock care. It's just outside the body rather than inside the body.
Yeah,
That's the
but
only
it doesn't
difference.
require your 24/7 care.
It doesn't matter who is the caretaker.
It kind of does, because if
No,
women could
because
take.
then that
wait, hold on.
caretaker can kill the child by logical extension.
Rachel, if it didn't matter who
The
would do it,
logical
then a
extension
1-month-old
of your
pregnant woman would say,
argument is
man, I'm
that-
just going to give my 1-month-old fetus to somebody else and let them fucking grow it. It kind of does matter, because that's what pregnancy's
No.
all about. Yes.
Well, and people do that, right? People
No,
have
they generally
surrogate
don't. It's
care.
usually
Yes.
pretty complicated or hard to take a fetus out of a
okay,
body.
wait,
Actually, by
1-month
that
fetus.
logic, then why not just birth the baby and let someone else take care of it? Then, if you don't want that, why not just follow the pregnancy to term? What I'm saying
Okay,
is
I will
that if
admit,
you're
but I'm a
going
guy, and I don't know fuck all about any of that shit, because who knows, okay? I did watch my baby's mom do that, though. It seems to be a pretty involved process for going all the way to the delivering the baby, more so than an abortion. Am I right or wrong on that?
Women are the gatekeepers of reproduction. That's a fact of life. There's nothing that can be
That's
done
not what we're
about
talking about. You said, why not just take it to term?
And
Because that's a
right,
bit
so
more
let's
complicated
take it
and
back.
arduous.
Let's take it back to how you said that my logic is not correct. I'm saying, again, that it doesn't matter if it's inside the body or outside the body. The
Ooh,
location
the ribs
does
didn't
not
feel good.
defeat the argument. I'm saying that if you're going to make the argument that this life depends on anyone, someone,
Oh, if he's going to the ground, you
many
know it's
people,
time.
one
Yeah,
person,
nobody made
for
that
it to
argument, though,
survive.
which is good. Because if we did, that would be a really good counter argument, but
People do.
nobody's saying that.
No,
And we
you're
have to go to the
saying
next
that
question.
the
I hate to
location
do
is
this,
the
but
thing that
this
makes
is gonna
it
go
different, and
forever.
it doesn't.
This one coming
Yeah,
in from
no.
Do Appreciate It. First name, last name says Destiny. I would like you to look into Biafra. What is that? And support my nation. Okay. We could use anybody's support. Please look into Nazdamati Canoe in our plight. Thank you for that. As well as Hypno Llama says, wow, Tree's logic is so broken. Destiny, don't pander. You know her logic was flawed. Anyone is dishonest. It's that.
About what? He didn't say which line.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, he's made the accusation, but he needs to
Yeah.
explain what Priest got wrong. I mean,
It's probably
Yeah,
some
doesn't really go
conservatives
anywhere.
who's mad that I basically just called them out, that they want to sit up here and have black babies, and when they want to sit up here and cry about their 1350, no fathers in the home, yet still they want to sit up here
Oh,
and
yes.
promote the very
I-
same thing that's going to cause that to
yes,
increase.
1350. I've heard about this one. Yeah, no, it was only when I started doing internet things that I learned what 1350 was. It's quite hilariously stupid, but yeah, never mind. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
This one coming in from Do Appreciate Your Question. Endo says, Rachel, biologists aren't concerned with moral epistemology. Quote unquote, human
Ooh,
is
that's nice, though.
specifically a biological definition. Why is having specific DNA sequence inherently valuable? Substantiated by the way pigs have 98% of our DNA.
So this was an ethical debate, and if you want to use scientific terms like Stephen does to try to establish
was hurting that
meaning,
boob.
then
That
we
hit
would have to
that.
get into a metaphysical argument about whether God exists, what the meaning of life is, what is meaning, how do you know what's good, how do you know what's bad, what are morals, like things like that. We didn't want to get
Go
off
for the
into
ride.
crazy like metaphysical stuff for the purpose of this
Here we
panel.
go. Time to go night-night.
So my argument was never that there's like some kind of DNA or some kind of scientific medical definition of life that matters. My position was that human life is human life, regardless of the stage of development, whether it's in its earliest embryonic stages or whether it's a 90-year-old person who's on their deathbed. It's still a human life. That's how I
All
define
right,
the
here we go.
value.
It's time to end this shit.
Thank you very much for this question coming in from Real Men Love Blueberry Waffle says, Rachel, are you being honest by your reasoning? You defend the infanticide ordered by God on the Midianites, Amalekites, and Canaanites as justified.
I can't speak to that because I am an Orthodox Christian and we are in the West. And in the West, the predominant interpretations of the Bible are Roman Catholic and Protestant, which I disagree with and I don't think are correct. And I don't have the time to do an entire like Bible hermeneutics for somebody to put those things in context. So that's why I stay away from those kind of things in these debates, and we just do it ethically, not on the basis of my Christian God.
This one coming in from Sal Willis.
Try a
says,
different
because
one.
of Ohio's
There we go.
6-week
That's
ban,
the submission I
a
like.
10-year-old rape victim has already had to cross state lines to get abortion care. What happens if you have a nationwide 6-week ban? And how often is rape provable? I think that's for you, Kenan, or Rachel.
Well, this is the big problem. One of the reasons we have such low conviction. I mean, I'm sure it's true in the United States. It's definitely going to be true in the UK.
Yeah,
One
can't
of the
feel
reasons
good.
we have such a low conviction rate for rape is because rape is
Night-night.
one of those crimes that's almost impossible to prove. There are no witnesses. There's very little physical evidence sometimes, especially if the victim has a shower afterwards or whatever. It could be destroyed. So the proving rape, regardless of abortion, is always going to be a nightmare. In terms of pregnancy through rape that might lead to an abortion, those pregnancies are actually astonishingly rare. Most abortions are performed on healthy women who are conceived by accident rather than by force, and who just don't want the trouble, the inconvenience, the ordeal of bringing a baby to term. So while obviously, if we're talking about a young girl who's been raped, I mean that's just horrendous. There's no way you can massage that. There's no way you can ground it. What we're in danger of doing, I think, is focusing on these extraordinarily unlikely plausible but unlikely scenarios, distracting ourselves from the main point, which is abortion is still killing a human being, and is that perfectly justified? So with that one, as I say, I'm rather soft on the topic of rape. But trying to prove it, as the question, as the interrogator has put it, it is hard. I'm not sure if I've got an easy solution for that one, if I'm being brutally honest.
Oh, what do you think he wants?
Yeah, sorry for that non-answer there, James. I do apologise, but there you go.
No worries. Sal Willis says, I am a mother of one, married, and have an intrauterine device because I don't want more children. If life begins at conception, am I a serial killer?
No, this is another time where when we're talking about logical argumentation versus people's emotions surrounding this topic, abortion is an extremely emotional topic. There might be things that are logically consistent and ethically consistent that are going to make people upset. This would be one of them. So that's why, I don't advocate for things like IUDs or other forms of birth control. People will disagree, they will get upset, they will get emotional. I'm saying it's still logically consistent that no, you don't want to try to prevent human life. You avoid sex then at that point.
You got this one coming in from?
Wait, real quick. So the answer to that question was yes, lady. You are a serial killer in Rachel's eyes.
I wouldn't call her a serial
She
killer.
absolutely
but I would
is.
say-
She's
no, I
taking
would say
active
it's
steps to
unethical.
prevent life, and she is preventing a conceived egg from implantation. She is a serial killer, or at least her husband is, because he's the one pumping the babies in.
The only thing is, the distinction I would draw, maybe this is where people want to correct me on this, is that if the egg is fertilized, it still hasn't started dividing necessarily, and it's therefore not.
Right.
It's not complicated enough to be.
Okay, so then wait, hold on. So then in that case, it's not the moment of conception; it's the moment of first mitosis, or what? Like,
yeah, as I say, we're splitting. I suppose we are splitting hairs, aren't we?
Yeah, well, that's
it's a
the
tough.
thing. You
it's a
have
tough
to.
one.
At a certain point, you have to.
no, you don't.
have
Well,
to-
if you're the reasons why you have to is because when you provide an inconsistent definition, that's when the 50 million asterisks will appear
No,
afterwards, because you have to keep saying like, well, that kind of is, that kind of is.
No,
that
I
kind of.
provided a consistent definition. It's
Then
just
call her
that
a serial
it's gonna
killer.
upset people, and
Tell her she's a serial
but
killer.
That's not technically true. It's
But
not
she
that you're a
is.
serial
This bitch has
killer.
killed fucking 20 kids by this point, probably, right? If her husband's come at her 20 times, there's been 20 conceived eggs. She's a serial killer. Or how many people do you need to kill to be a serial killer?
You know, you have some super vague definition of consciousness that you can't even pinpoint. So it's.
Are you
like,
conscious
we're
right
gonna
now?
split
Does it feel
here.
very vague? I guess it feels kind of vague from my end,
We
but I
don't
think you're
know.
pretty
How do we
conscious.
know? right? We don't know.
We don't.
have
We
to
just. We
assume.
truly don't
We
know.
act as though we are.
We truly
Act
don't
as though
know.
we
I
are.
truly can't figure out if any other person in this
It's gotta be
conversation is
his older
conscious or
than
not. It's so mysterious. This is what I mean when I
This is
say
a
backing everything a
legitimate-
macro
this is a
look at
legitimate
arguments.
debate
It's not.
in
No, this is
academia.
not a
It is.
legitimate debate.
In
The
academia,
legitimate
it's a
debate is going to be
legitimate
like,
debate.
what
Among
are the precise
scientific
areas? No,
philosophers, it is.
no,
Yes,
no, it's
it is.
not.
Shit.
There might be
Go
debates about the
college.
precise.
Go argue
there
with,
might be debates about
philosophy
like
of science
the
students.
precise mechanisms that give rise to conscious experience, but nobody's debating if we are or aren't
think
conscious.
that'd be a nice
okay?
message.
That is
We're not,
squarely in the
right?
realm of esoteric philosophy that will write papers back and forth to each other
again,
until they
you
die.
don't like it. You don't
It's not that I don't like it. I don't like that you won't call the woman
You
a
think
serial
it's
killer when
stupid.
she has met all of your definitions for murdering fucking fetuses over and over again. I don't know why you won't call her a serial killer.
This one from OG Snoop says, Destiny, are people with Down syndrome conscious?
Yeah, they seem to have the necessary structures in the brain to have conscious experiences. So yeah, of course.
Made by Jim Bob says, Destiny, a human is and becoming at every moment.
that was a nice
except
one. I like
death.
that.
Stephen was once a fetus, same human being, different stage.
And a building
Yes,
was once,
exactly.
you know, a bunch of discrete materials. It doesn't make the discrete materials a building.
You're talking about composition, and that's different.
I'm not talking about composition.
Alright,
I'm
there we
talking
go.
about emergence and ontology.
My playground.
When something becomes something as the emergence of other things coming together, it does not mean that it is the things that was
So, are
preceding
you
it. So if I lay out 100 boards on a deck, I don't say, oh, those boards are a boat because I'm about to hammer them all together and make a boat. They are fundamentally something different.
The
boat.
DNA is already combined, though. So
It doesn't.
the
It doesn't matter.
blueprint for life
DNA
is
in and of itself. If I cut
it's
my
already
finger off, my
consolidated.
finger has all the DNA of my body. When we talk about this is actually a topic of metaphysics. Is substance. There's a difference
So be a
between
nice-
like the substance of a
nice
thing
message,
and the
don't you think?
relationship of things to make another thing. An emergent thing that appears is fundamentally different than the discrete parts that make that thing up. If I cut off an arm and I hand it to you, or if I cut off all the pieces of a body and give it to you, I can't say, oh look, it's a human. It's not a human because it's not put together like a human. The human itself is fundamentally different than the sum of its parts and the things that exist discretely beneath it.
Yeah,
This one
there's
coming in
a,
from Endo says, Rachel, biologists aren't concerned with moral epistemology. Quote unquote human is specifically a biological definition. Why? No, we read that one, sorry. Bowl of Spaghetti says condescension doesn't cover up pure
Shit.
idiocy.
Nice. I don't know. That was insulting.
Who said 4? Coffee Bomb, thanks so much, says don't conflate abortion with infanticide. Thanks.
Okay. It
This
doesn't
one, Jupiter
explain why,
Darwin
but
says,
There we go.
just the obligatory quote, what about the test of the unfaithful wife in the book of Numbers? Unquote. Question for pro-lifers, biblical abortion.
Oh shit.
I don't
wasn't looking at
use
my
the
sound
Bible
there.
as a source for this particular argument because that would be hypocritical. I'm not a Christian, so I don't know what that story. I've read the Bible. I can't remember that story, so I can't deconstruct it in any meaningful way.
yeah,
Doesn't
and I would
come
give
in.
the same answer I gave earlier, which is that I don't believe you can properly interpret the Bible without the Orthodox Church. So that's why I don't argue these things.
This one coming in from Bowl of Spaghetti says, prove that there is a soul. What is the evidence for a soul?
Well, you can't prove the existence of a soul any more than you can prove the existence of consciousness. It certainly seems that way, right? We all operate as
This
if
bitch is
there's
crazy.
consciousness. We all operate and act as if there's a soul. But what do you mean by prove it? Like, do you want material proof? Or, you know what I mean? That's when you get into, can you materially prove
I
these
like that
things, or are we
combo.
having a metaphysical debate?
What gives rise to a soul?
God.
Okay, if I show you a desk, does a desk have a soul?
No.
If I show you a human foot, does that have a soul?
The foot in and of itself.
If I just
no.
cut a foot off and I give it to you, does this have the soul of a person?
No.
So okay, so you can tell me where it's not. Can you draw some kind of boundary around where it is?
Okay, I will
that's a
try
nice
to,
one. Shit,
but
shit.
again, we're getting into a theological debate here. In Orthodoxy, we have something called an essence-energies distinction. We don't think that human beings are just substance, and we don't think they're just energy. We think
push
they're
him
a
down,
combination
push him
of
down.
both. And
Let's
we
go.
would believe that when you are conceived, you have something called a nous, which is similar to the Western concept of a soul, which combines your mental faculties with your emotional faculties and your spiritual faculties.
Where are the
So-
faculties found?
There's not a physical location necessarily, but when people talk about the heart, that's usually what they mean.
Let's go.
Then
One
again,
more
you get
time,
into
one
a
more
So if somebody
metaphysical
has
debate.
like,
If it's a physical location, not everything. So like consciousness
is it
doesn't
like-
have a physical
Got him,
location
son.
either.
well, yes, it does. It arises from a
No.
physical location. Yes.
A lot of scientists don't believe that the brain is where
People don't like
consciousness
that ground and pound, do you?
necessarily resides. Again,
You can
if
take
you
the
do
rest of
scientific
this
philosophy,
conversation. I challenge you to find me a single published scientist that thinks that consciousness arises from something that's not the brain.
I will send you some discourse between scientific philosophers.
No, I don't want somebody that does
Yes.
the philosophy of science. That's a
Well,
fundamentally
the
different
philosophy
topic.
of science is extremely important. You can't do science without it. So-
Unfortunately, you absolutely can. So,
No.
philosophy of science is a
No.
markedly philosophy of science is a markedly different thing than the practice or exercise of science
Well,
itself.
then you're a
These are-
materialist. Then you're talking about only
Also, the next one.
materialism. So
Hate to do
then
this,
it's
but
a whole
we
nother
must do it.
debate.
Full of
Yeah.
Spaghetti says 2 questions for Rachel. Rachel, you were getting so much attention. It's not even funny. They said, should you be forced to donate organs to someone that is dying?
No.
And 2, do you understand that women can't choose to be pregnant?
I totally
Yeah,
disagree
they
with
can.
that. Yeah, they can
Of course they
totally
can.
choose.
Oh, no, not
It's
in my case.
incredible.
Not in all
No,
scenarios,
Let's look
maybe.
at my
But
case. we used the condom. It broke. Now let's say.
But what about for
instance-
rape?
You just don't
Yeah.
have sex, and then you'll never get pregnant.
Wait a minute, that was not
If
the
you just
question.
don't have sex, you can choose to never get.
No,
Nuns
it's-
never get pregnant, right? Because they go to the monastery and they never have sex, and they don't
the-
ever have to worry
the
about
way,
it.
Oh
the
my
way the
God.
question was, the phrasing of the
It's
question was
true.
poor. The phrasing of the question was poor. It is, of course, possible for a woman to choose to get pregnant if she, because that's how people plan families, right? You can choose
Yeah.
to be pregnant if you engage in certain activities. It is also true to say that sometimes a woman falls pregnant by accident. So she didn't choose to be
or
pregnant.
without
in
her
that
choice.
scenario.
A
We'll do
woman
one
can
more,
be
let's
pregnant
be
without
right.
her choice.
Yeah, but you can
Yeah.
also, there is a foolproof way to not get pregnant if you don't want to get pregnant. And that is a fact.
And this is why Christianity is losing. To sit up here and tell people
I'm not
they can't
making
have
a Christian
sex, it's just
argument.
stupid.
That's a secular argument. I'm not
Oh
making
my
a
God.
Christian
Now,
argument.
You don't want to get pregnant, don't have sex. This is so stupid.
No, it's logically correct and it's true and it's a
To be fair-
fact.
to be
Is
fair-
that not
to be fair,
correct?
true-
If you don't
to be
have
fair-
sex,
to
are
be
you going
fair-
to get pregnant, Tree?
To be fair, Tree, yeah, to be fair, abstinence, however unlikely it is a really good way of not getting pregnant.
Right. You might not
Um,
like it. You might be
Are y'all
emotional
saying-
about it, but it's
Are
true.
you guys saying realistically that if you're
Oh, here we
teaching
go.
abstinence, which is what they're doing in the Christian church, and people still getting pregnant up in the church?
No,
No,
that's
I'm not saying- I'm not saying that-
I'm not
that's
saying
people
a
are big-
separate argument.
No,
That's
Tree,
a
Tree.
separate
I'm not.
thing.
We probably ourselves have seen them there.
I'm not saying
okay,
that people
Kendra,
are.
I'll answer the
preachers
question.
going
Yes,
to
it's
little
true.
boys.
If a woman does not have sex, she can't get pregnant.
Exactly.
I will yield.
Yeah, no, but what I'm
talking
saying
to
is,
you. I'm talking to
however,
him. I will yield to that. What I'm saying is that the question is, I will say that a woman, like you said earlier, a woman can have sex and choose not to get pregnant. She can use a condom. She can also be on birth control. These things are not 100% effective. But if she makes the conscious effort to prevent pregnancy and she gets pregnant, I believe it's evil to make her have a baby if she doesn't want to, especially if she's in poverty, and especially if she's 10 years old, as in that story you shared earlier.
well, these. Yeah, that's good.
Where is this one coming in from? Creep Fighter says, is the soul as detectable as... It's weird. Rhett X101 says, Destiny/Tree. If lines are arbitrary and meaningful conscious experience is hard to define, would it be reasonable to say a person with anencephaly has a reduced conscious experience and perhaps meaningless? Wouldn't it make more sense to put the line at the point when the equipment develops?
That's where I put the line at, but the equipment develops for at around 20 to 24 weeks.
Gotcha. And Rage Pro says, congratulations on discovering fetal transplant.
Cool.
Gnostic Informant says, Rachel, what happens to souls of aborted babies? Do they go to hell? If they go straight to heaven for being sinless, then why risk hell from world sin?
Again, this is a conversation that I cannot give you my entire theology. It would take a long time to give you my entire theology. All the different Christian churches disagree on this. My church's position is that we don't 100% know.
That's the winner.
We rely on God to make that decision. We assume and we think it's highly likely that because they have not been able to commit
Go
a sin,
good, yeah.
that
There we go.
divorce aborted babies would go to heaven.
good
That is
one.
generally the position of the church.
Shit.
But there's a lot of things that my church doesn't say we know unequivocally for sure because we don't know the mind of God. Again, it's a separate argument. I did not make a single Christian argument in this entire debate. Yet all the questions are, well, if God real, why bad thing happened? Explain, Christian woman. So that's how it goes, though. That's just how that goes.
Bull Spaghetti says, does Rachel agree with Noah's flood? There's a lot of going into Christian type arguments or against Christianity.
Yeah.
But we'll go into Roger Bernacki says, Kenan and Rachel, is there no difference for you between an abortion 1 week after conception and an abortion 1 week before delivery, such as maybe 8.5 months into it? If there is, then
the difference is purely the matter, I suppose, that's been removed from the uterus, but the result is the same. An entire human timeline has been stopped.
Right.
So yeah, okay, an abortion not 1 week in, you're dealing with.
See, some people
I
that
don't know
choose
how many
wrestlers, they got a
cells.
little bit
I
better.
dare say someone with a calculator could work it out. If you're talking about abortion 1 week before birth, well, I mean you're just killing a full-grown baby at that point. But the product is the same. No more human life to worry about.
Yeah, it's
So,
just a matter of
yeah.
degree. It's just a matter of degree at that point. It's third-degree murder versus first-degree murder, something along those lines. I'm not trying to make a perfect analogy, but it's a matter of degree.
Jet Endo says, Rachel, it's not, quote, this thing depends on me so I can kill it. Instead, it's, quote, this thing uses my body and I have a right to get my body back. Should people have that right to get their body back from it being used?
Well, the fetus has a body as well. The baby has a body. The baby is a body.
This was
And if we're
crazy.
going to make we never really got into a personal autonomy argument on this panel, but it's one of the easiest to defeat because then you can just pose the question, at what point does someone have bodily autonomy? Is it at 2 weeks gestation? Is it at 6 months gestation? Is it after birth? Is it at 2 years old? There's a body in your body. You have bodily autonomy, perhaps, but
Shit.
why would
Well,
then
then-
that body within your body not also have bodily autonomy?
You got it. This one coming in from Duke.